Hello there. Thank you for joining us for this look at the best original reporting from KPBS News this week. I'm John Carroll. Coming up, the price of going to work. Landscapers, movers, and others who use their own vehicles describe how record high gas prices are forcing them to make some tough choices. Takeaways from a new state report on reparations. Hear from those trying to put a number on what descendants of slavery should be owed. And later, making your lawn drought ready. As new restrictions are rolled out, we look at the options for those looking to swap out their green grass. We start, though, with verdict watch for the largest scandal in Navy history. The jury in the Fat Leonard case will resume deliberations next week. After nearly a decade since the corruption case was brought to light, KPBS military reporter Steve Walsh looks at how it's affected the Navy's culture.
It was a corruption scandal of epic proportions. Malaysian defense contractor Leonard Francis used U.S. Navy officers to steer ships to his ports in the Western Pacific, greasing the wheels with gifts, sex workers, and lavish parties with scantily clad women. Vice Admiral Craig Fuller attended at least one party as a ship's captain. Senator Elizabeth Warren pressed him about it during a confirmation hearing in 2018.
What do you say to women officers when they see that this is the kind of event you have attended?
Senator, I have always had the utmost respect for all servicemen and women.
The Navy cleared Fuller and other officers of wrongdoing. Francis pleaded guilty in 2015 to defrauding the Navy of at least $35 million. Dan Grazer is with the Project on Government Oversight. He says hundreds of officers watched Francis, widely known as Fat Leonard for his size, lay out the red carpet.
It just became kind of the way business was done within the 7th Fleet. And, the longer it went on, the more people got involved in it and the more normalized that behavior became. And so we ended up with a massive scandal that we have.
Among the Navy officials on Francis's payroll was an agent for the Navy's criminal service who pleaded guilty to taking bribes to keep Francis up to date on the Navy's own investigations. Still, Senator Warren's exchange is one of only a handful of times the so-called Fat Leonard case has come up on Capitol Hill during the decade-long probe. Again, Dan Grazer.
And it's shocking how little people even today in Washington really even know about Fat Leonard. No, it rarely makes the news here.
Once the scandal broke, the Navy took away some of the authority officers have to decide which ports to use. Though the Navy tightened up the paperwork, it hasn't taken a hard look at the underlying culture which allowed officers to condone the party atmosphere. Pauline Shanks-Corinne teaches ethics at the Naval War College.
It's not something, at least in my circles, that the Navy is talking a lot about, and so I'm not sure that we've learned the lessons or have thought about what this means for Navy culture.
Francis was arrested in San Diego in 2013, but Pauline Shanks-Corinne says the War College still hasn't incorporated a case study about the massive bribery scandal into its ethics curriculum.
One senior leader said to me, listen, I know people who were involved. And I've heard from other senior leaders things like, well, I had a good friend whose career was ruined because of this. And, so I think there's just people don't want to talk about it.
When students talk about it in class, they talk about different spanks for different ranks. The notion that higher ranking officers were treated differently. Ron Carr, a retired Navy captain, says the case cast a long shadow over everyone who served in the Pacific during the 2000s and early 2010s.
It really has put mud for all of us who were not involved with this, because there's always that assumption that potentially maybe we just didn't get caught.
Carr was a logistics officer on board the USS Blue Ridge. As the flagship for the U.S. Pacific Fleet, the Blue Ridge was at the center of the federal indictments. Given the size of the problem, Carr is disappointed that the Fat Leonard case didn't shine a brighter light on Navy corruption.
I think the challenge from a publicity point of view is that it just dragged out for so long. Here we are having this conversation when he was arrested 9 years ago.
Nearly a decade later, as the Fat Leonard case draws to a close, it's still unclear how much the scandal has changed Navy culture. Steve Walsh, KPBS News.
Once again, a San Diego neighborhood is making room for more bike lanes at the expense of street parking. And as we've seen in North Park and elsewhere, a debate is raging over how to strike a balance between safety and accessibility. KPBS reporter Kitty Alvarado went to University Heights to hear from both sides.
You must be at full attention when driving down Park Boulevard in University Heights. It's busy, so there's little room for error. As we pull alongside a guy on a bike, I roll down my window and ask if he's excited about the bike lanes the city's making for cyclists like him. Thumbs up?
We'll see once they're in. I'm not so sure.
If you missed that, he said he's not too sure. Not the reaction I expected at all.
I hope they work for everyone because I think the businesses are going to be negatively impacted by all this.
Guido Hammacher pulled over and gave us a little more insight. He says he lives in the neighborhood and bikes daily to take his son to school, run errands, and work out. He says this could work, but on parallel streets that aren't as busy and won't make it near impossible to go to his favorite local hangouts.
I'm torn about it because on the one hand I see what is supposed to be achieved. I feel a lot of the businesses are being impacted by not being able to swing by, park with a car because parking spaces are gone. And I don't know how this is all going to play out on the long run.
Definitely not pleased or excited about them at all.
He's not alone. We couldn't find one person who liked them. And people who depend on this area for their livelihood, like Rob DeRue, a stylist at Park Salon who's worked here for over 10 years, says it's not just inconvenient, but also bad for business and just won't work.
Taking those spots away is going to create a world of congestion. And it just doesn't make sense because we have surface streets on each side that are perfectly capable of facilitating the bike lanes or alternate routes for the bikers. This is a main artery of traffic through this neighborhood, and so it just makes absolutely no sense.
The number one reason for putting a bikeway in is to save lives, and I think, again, no amount of parking spaces is worth someone's life.
But Will Radigan with the Bike Coalition of San Diego County says 16 cyclists were killed last year in the city alone. He says he understands that it feels inconvenient, but in reality, only 10% of parking will shift to side streets. He says that change will be worth it.
We've seen over and over that people are really scared and confused before these new bikeways go in. But then once they're installed, within a few months, they realize the sky hasn't fallen. They can actually still drive where they need to go pretty easily. But now everyone's a little bit safer.
The project will continue through Balboa Park in the fall. Kitty Alvarado, KPBS News.
This weekend, local gas prices are averaging around $6.35 per gallon, according to AAA. KPBS North County reporter Tanya Thorne caught up with some small business owners that are having a hard time keeping up.
Juan Verduzco owns 24/7 Movers Vista. No matter what the price at the pump reads, he relies on his trucks to get his work done.
This truck, I will say around $240, $250.
Before gas was averaging $6 per gallon, Verduzco says he could fill up his moving trucks with about half of what he's paying now.
That's really the hard part, running our business, when you have to go, to San Diego, National City, Santee, for a minimum call service that it is 3 hours. So you only get paid for 3 hours. And so it's a 2 hours drive back and forth. That all the money that you're supposed to make, it kind of stay, with the gas price and also the employees, So it's not much money that it comes, to the owners.
Verduzco says he hasn't raised his prices because he knows his clients are also dealing with this economy, and higher rates could scare business away. But where Verduzco has seen an increase in business are out-of-state moves.
More people that are moving out of California than people moving in. They say they're leaving because the high price of living in San Diego is really, is not affordable, so people cannot afford anymore to live in here.
Leonardo Hernandez owns Los Reyes Landscape and Maintenance.
Nosotros queremos aumentar el precio y los clientes como que andan pensándola muy bien si sí o no.
He says he wants to raise his rates in order to keep up with the price of gas. But he notices clients then think twice about hiring him or look for cheaper service.
Si vamos un poquito más lejos, digamos más como el centro del condado, tenemos que cobrar un poco más.
Hernandez says new clients call him, but if the distance is too far, he has to charge more, or sometimes he turns the job down because there's no profit after having to fill up. Aside from his work trucks, his machinery also runs on gas.
Es de gasolina y esta es una sopladora.
He says that as much as he'd like to switch his gas-run equipment to electric, they're too expensive.
Queremos saber qué puede hacer el gobernador.
He wants to know what the governor is doing about lowering gas prices because the situation isn't getting any better. Blanca Perez is a house cleaner. She says she feels lucky that she has enough work for the week.
Pues antes mi carrito lo llenaba con $40 y ahora pues lo lleno con 80 y pues con por el mismo sueldo y pues es frustrante.
But her cost for gas has doubled and her income has stayed the same. She says some clients have been okay with small rate increases, but others have canceled their cleaning services. Like Verduzco and Hernandez, she says she also lost business to clients moving out of state.
Muchos se están moviendo de aquí de California y también estoy perdiendo trabajo porque se están moviendo para otros estados por lo mismo de los precios tan elevados.
Perez says she is considering getting a second job in order to keep up with her expenses. She hopes the governor is working on lowering gas prices and the cost of living, because she thinks this is a problem that is hurting the lower and middle class the most. Tanya Thorne, KPBS News.
It's not just finances that are bringing turmoil to the San Diego Repertory Theater. After a recent decision to suspend productions and lay off staff, arts reporter Beth Accomando has details on the allegations of racism and misogyny behind the scenes.
When San Diego Rep's production of The Great Con closed in March, the 6-person cast delivered a statement written by actress Michaela Bartholomew at the final curtain call. Here's part of that statement read by cast member Jerome Beck that night.
We make this statement as a cast and crew that has been subject to mistreatment, much of it disproportionately impacting the Black team members on this show over the last 2 months. And while it brought us all together, it exhausted us, depleted us. But we hope that it sparks a lasting change in this theater.
Then, after the Rep announced its decision to suspend operations, the group shared a letter on Instagram. In it, they say they were subjected to, quote, racism, misogyny noir, discrimination and disrespect, racial profiling of hired artists, physical intimidation, and ill care following injury while working at the Rep. The Rep's artistic director, Sam Woodhouse, did not directly respond to the allegations. However, he read from a prepared statement.
Our goal remains, and we have much work to do towards this goal, to become a fully inclusive, equitable, anti-racist, multicultural organization.
One of the people losing their job because of the Rep's suspension of operations is Ahmed Kenyatta Dents, host of the Rep's We Are Listening Salon series. The final episode aired last night, and Dents acknowledged all those who will no longer be employed by the Rep after June 19th, and referenced an event the theater will be holding on June 20th.
I know there's invitations sent out about the toast and to celebrate the whatever, and all the artists and colleagues who come through here. I get it. I understand it. There should be some type of celebration. I feel you. Have a drink for me. Cannot be there. I can't be there. I can't be there in good conscience. There's too many people working hard right now. There's too many people this is affected going out the door. It's the day after we're getting laid off, and it's Juneteenth. Can't be there.
Beth Accomando, KPBS News.
That story is among our most read this week at kpbs.org. Here are some others. Claire Tregeser investigates the religious exemption requests from San Diego police officers over COVID-19 tests. Our news partner iNewsSource details the jump in arrests as San Diego pursues a policy of progressive enforcement of homelessness. And Matt Hoffman's story on a plan to give cash to local seniors to help them pay for rent. California is in the middle of a first-of-its-kind review of reparations. Recently, an update was released on the task force's work as it tries to link slavery to today's systemic racism. KPBS's Jade Hindman tells us about some of the early takeaways.
The prevailing narrative is that California entered the Union as a free state and that Jim Crow and racism never existed here. But a year-long examination that included expert testimony and history records by the California Reparations Task Force exposed that narrative as a myth.
Those dominant narratives have been pretty much altogether dispelled, right? We learned very early on in the process that California did have slavery in the state. We've learned early on in the process that Jim Crow did exist in California.
Moore says that reality didn't just impact African Americans in the past. Its devastating consequences continue into the present day through laws, policies, and institutions. The task force calls them badges of slavery, and Moore says they pervade every sector of civil society.
We outlined, racial terror, separate and unequal education, political disenfranchisement, housing segregation, racism in environment and infrastructure, the pathologizing of the Black family, control over creative, cultural, and intellectual life, stolen labor and hindered opportunity, an unjust legal system, mental and physical harm and neglect, and then lastly, the wealth gap.
The report outlines numerous recommendations to help repair slavery's damage and the lingering effects on Black Americans. Proposals include free health care and interest-free home loans. The task force is also proposing that California create an agency to support genealogical research to help people confirm their eligibility for reparations. To qualify, a person must be a descendant of an enslaved Black person or of a free Black person living in the U.S. before the end of the 19th century. Dr. Evelyn McDowell, whose testimony led to some of the proposals around eligibility, says genealogical research is also key to true self-knowledge.
It is extremely important for yourself, for your own self-love, to know who you are and where you came from so you can identify how you fit in the history of this country. So I just think it's a good thing for us individually to do. It's a good thing for our country to do. How are we ever going to heal from this history of slavery?
Economists say any meaningful healing must include a commitment by the federal government to fix the nationwide wealth gap at an estimated cost of $14 trillion. And that's not all. In addition, they estimate the debt owed for the stolen labor through the enslavement of Black people alone is a little over $6 quadrillion. Jade Hindman, KPBS News.
It's grad season, and there is no shortage of inspiring stories of students who have overcome great challenges to achieve their goals. Perhaps none more so than downtown's Monarch School. KPBS education reporter M.G. Perez met some of the new grads.
Amid the pomp and circumstance at this graduation ceremony, 18-year-old Rosario Alvarez is the valedictorian of the Monarch School's class of 2022.
My first language is Spanish. I raised with my family. My family is Mexican, so I speak more Spanish.
Rosario has learned English along with economics and engineering in the past 4 years with her other classmates. There are 13 of them total, with one empty chair for Juliana Campos, who died 3 years ago of a common flu. She had no health insurance. A hard reality for these graduates who spent their high school years without stable housing, often living in a car or with family or friends.
I also like to thank my family. They are the ones who motivate me to continue, and they always give me the support when I need it most.
Rosario's support came from her mother, Alejandra, who is not able to cross the Mexican border legally from Tijuana. This valedictorian crossed back and forth every school day to make sure she graduated, to someday become a criminal attorney representing those who need help the most.
With my mom is a single mom, so I think a lot of people need people who can be more helping the community.
Her passion is prompted by the power of her native language and love for her mother.
Ella siempre le he visto luchar por mi bienestar y siempre ha querido que yo estudie para que pueda ser alguien mejor en la vida y creo que eso es muy bueno.
I propose, fellow graduate, look at who we have next to us at this very special moment, because today we are all part of this new generation.
The class of 2022 has so many other success stories to tell, as some go on to Southwestern College, City College, Grossmont College, and Barber College this fall.
Why is the butterfly the symbol of our school? It's because it's about metamorphosis, right? It's about recognizing that change is inherent to life, and how you embrace change in order to become something beautiful is what we're here to do.
The perseverance of these graduates is beautiful in any language. The gratitude is too. Rosario puts the gratitude for her mother this way.
Yo le agradezco por todo lo que ha hecho.
It now gives me a great pleasure to present Monarch School's graduating class of 2022.
Congratulations, Monarch class of 2022. MG Perez, KPBS News.
A reminder, you can find all of our content anytime on the KPBS YouTube page. In addition to reporter stories, you can stream KPBS Evening Edition live weeknights at 5 o'clock. It was nearly a year ago Governor Gavin Newsom asked Californians to cut their water use by 15%. It didn't happen, and now we're seeing the return of tougher water restrictions. I recently got some advice from experts on how to care for your lawn using a lot less water, and on drought-friendly landscaping, which might see a boost in interest this summer. For decades, they've been part of the American dream, Southern California style. But verdant lawns are disappearing more and more thanks to shrinking water supplies. The Golden State is now in its third year of drought. In fact, a study released in February by the group Nature Climate Change found this is the worst drought in what is now the western U.S. in 1,200 years. So it's important we all do what we can to conserve water. But does that mean yanking out your lawn? Not necessarily.
We can reduce irrigation use on almost any property by 50 to 70% with proper irrigation tools.
The owner of Greenway Irrigation Lawn and Landscape, Scott Lawn, yes, that's his real name,
has helped customer recognition.
Lawn says if you really want to keep your lawn, you can use a lot less water keeping it green by using these MPR stream rotors and good old drip irrigation. But more and more, he says people are opting for either turf and drought-resistant plants along with hardscape, that is decorative rocks and pavers. When it comes to turf, this is not your dad's AstroTurf.
The fibers now, they've come up with all sorts of ways to swirl the fibers, to twist the fibers, and to give it some rigidity and that cushioning that you're noticing, and it looks natural.
But if you're ready to move on from the lawn look, there is an amazing array of colorful plants that use very little water. That aforementioned array can be found here in the sumptuous setting of the Water Conservation Garden at Cuyamaca College. This is where we met Efren Lopez, a water resources specialist with the San Diego County Water Authority.
San Diegans have done a great part in continuing with water use efficiency, but there's always more we can do.
Amidst the winding trails of this nearly 5-acre garden, we talked to Lopez about incentives to get more water-wise.
We have some of the highest rebates in California to take out your turf grass, to replace an irrigation controller, to replace your washing machine. We have some of the best rebates in the state.
When it comes to the drought, San Diego County is in a better place than most of the state. Years of investment in localizing our water supply, think the big desalination plant in Carlsbad, are paying off. The region has also invested in expanding how much water can be stored locally. In addition, pure water projects that convert wastewater into pure drinkable water are either being constructed or are online. The first phase of San Diego's massive project is expected to come online next year and will provide 15 million gallons of purified water every day. The second phase is set to be complete in 2035. Once finished, the system is slated to provide 83 million gallons of water a day, about a third of the city's future water supply. And as Lopez points out, San Diegans have done a remarkable job in conserving water over the past 3 decades. As the population has grown, Lopez says water use has decreased by about 40%. The Water Authority says we're water secure for the next few decades. The biggest use of water here happens outdoors, so turning to plants like these here in the Water Conservation Garden helps a lot. You don't have to be interested in drought-resistant planting ideas to visit the Water Conservation Garden. It is a beautiful, serene place that is definitely worth your time. But there is another place not far from here that has its own examples of drought-resistant plantings that are a little more manageable.
We serve 277,000 customers in the cities of La Mesa, El Cajon, and Lemon Grove, and also portions of the surrounding unincorporated areas.
Michelle Curtis is the Public Affairs Supervisor with the Helix Water District.
In 2020, we decided it was time to really showcase what we've been encouraging our customers to do.
The district pulled out the ivy and trees that used to surround their headquarters and installed 3 demonstration gardens: Mediterranean, Desert, and Native California. First, the Mediterranean.
They tend to have very soft colors, a lot of texture, and also a lot of fragrance. So it's a nice sensory experience.
Okay, Michelle, tell me about this garden.
So on this side of our building, we have our desert landscape, more cactus and succulent based than you saw on the Mediterranean side.
Last but not least, the California Native Garden.
So you'll see we have some Cleveland sage, we have some different types of flax lilies, but it's really very textural. So if you're out here, especially if the wind's blowing, you'll see all the grasses blowing in the wind. But this is also going to be our lowest water use garden.
The lowest water use garden. That's because these are plants that were around in California before green lawns and palm trees. Plants that developed to survive in an arid climate. Plants that carry a message for how we can all adapt in our day and age as water becomes more precious by the day. Now, something I didn't have time to include in that story, the demonstration gardens at the Helix Water District have scannable codes, QR codes for each of the plants, which tell you how to care for the plant, whether it's better in sun or shade, and other information. So if you're in La Mesa, check it out. We hope you enjoyed this look at KPBS News This Week. I'm John Carroll. Thank you for joining us.